Good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's webinar. It's focusing on practical inclusion, how we can use disability employment support in real time. My name is Anna Boda, and I'm the Program Manager of Employers for Change, a program of the Open Doors Initiative. I'm a white female with brown shoulder-length hair, frameless glasses, and today I'm wearing a flowery shirt. And I also have a purple virtual background with our logos. In terms of housekeeping, we are really glad to see this high interest for the session. In the room, we really have employers from various sectors and industries from across the country. So thank you again for being here this morning. This session is being recorded and your microphones are turned off for the duration of the presentation. And feel free to turn on or off your video, but just be aware that it might be recorded. My colleague Mo is here to provide technical support. He's in the chat, so he's happy to answer any questions, and he will be providing also some information during the sessions. Please use the chat functionality to input any reactions or share your thoughts during the session. I think it just makes it more interactive, and it's interesting for you as well, to see like what do you agree with, or what kind of reactions you have. But for questions, just to make it easier, please use the Q&A, which is on top of your screen. And thank you so much for submitting questions already during the registration. They're really, really helpful, and we try to incorporate them already into the presentations. Also, captions are available during the sessions. You can turn it on under the 3 dots and more, and then language and speech, again, on top of your screen. And we are also really grateful for Catherine to be here and provide ISL interpretation. In terms of the agenda, I will be doing a short introduction, and then it will be followed by information around the work and access scheme, and especially focused on the updates. And then will be a really exciting part as well, where we will hear about an experience of an employer, and we will have time for Q&A in the end. So in terms of speakers, so I will be doing the introduction, then Niall Lane from the Department of Social Protection will cover the work and access, and we are really grateful as well for Tony Ryan to be here, who will be sharing his experience as an employer. And in terms of us, just a very short introduction. So Employers for Change is a program of the Open Doors Initiative. And Open Doors Initiative is like an umbrella organization for us. And our aim and mission is to enable equitable access to employability for underrepresented groups through a network of partners. And some of you are here with us, so thanks for being here. But we also work very closely with different NGOs and government departments, such as the Department of Social Protection. So we are really glad for this partnership as well. So we focus specifically on people with disabilities with 2 of our programs. So Towards Work is supporting job seekers with disabilities, and Employers for Change is focusing on employers, but we also support refugees, asylum seekers and migrants, people with criminal history, people from the LGBTQIA community, or from the traveler community. And as many of you here probably know, that there is a lot of intersection between these groups as well, and we want to acknowledge that maybe the experience of a disabled person from the traveler community might be different than from a disabled person from another community. So this is why we want to acknowledge that aspect as well. And Employers for Change is really focusing on supporting employers. So this is why we are a disability information service for employers. And we want to empower employers with all the information and advice needed to hire, employ, manage, and retain and progress staff with disabilities. We are funded by the Department of Children, Disability, and Equality. We provide various supports, but just to mention some. We provide free supports in terms of consultation, so any employer from Ireland can come to us. We are more than happy to review your policies or consult around them, talk about your reasonable accommodation practices or specific questions. We are happy to support you in implementing the reasonable accommodation passport and also guide you around the government supports or setting up employee resource groups. We have a lot of resources ready for you, so feel free to check our website. We have different toolkits and guides. Just this year, we launched our disclosure toolkit, which is really interesting around how to gather information and how to create psychologically safe environments for people to feel that they are comfortable to disclose about their disability. But we also have around inclusive recruitment, disability terminology, or accessible communications, and many more. We also, as I mentioned, we partnered with several organizations. So we have partnered in the last 2 years with AHEAD, who have developed in partnership with us the WIDE framework, which again is a free and accessible for everyone platform, and it can be accessed under wide.employersforchange.ie. This platform was funded by the Department of Social Protection. And this is an open access online platform. And again, it's designed to support employers throughout all the stages of an employee life cycle. And the idea is how you can create inclusive workplaces with different segments of it. So feel free to check it out. And in the follow-up email, I will send more information because we have a WIDE Leaders program now open for application, which will be a 10-month expert-led and supported program. But more information will come in the follow-up email to you. And as we know, raising awareness is really important, but of course, from awareness, we have to move into active inclusion. But it's important to start with awareness, and it's important to acknowledge that employers need information, and it's important to equip ourselves, with all the skills needed to create inclusive workplaces. So this is why we provide tailored trainings. It can be for all your staff or for specific teams. For example, the communications teams, they usually avail of the inclusive and accessible communications training, or we have specific training for managers. But the most popular one is still the disability awareness, equality and inclusion training, which is open for all staff usually, and it's also CPD accredited. And how it connects with the work and access is that we are really grateful for this scheme, and all our trainings are eligible mostly for 90% coverage by the work and access scheme. Again, feel free to contact us after, but you can find more information on our website as well. And why this topic is so important? Because we know that in Ireland, based on the latest census, we have more than 1.1 million people living with a disability. To put that into perspective, so it's more than 1 in 5 of us. So just for today, in terms of the numbers, so we have statistically more than 12 of us might have a disability just on this online webinar, and I know some of you might be watching it over recording, and I'm taking one statistical slot because I have an invisible disability. So this is important when we think about our workforce, our future workforce, that there are probably people already with disabilities who might need support, or just to think about them. And when it comes to employment, in Ireland, we always talk about full employment, which is great, but it's not fully true for marginalized groups. So people with disabilities have only 49% of them are employed currently. And when we compare it to the EU averages, we are in the bottom, but not the lowest, but we are not on the top for sure. So this is why we are really grateful that you are all here, because only together we can change this. And one important aspect, just to very briefly mention, that it's really important to create equitable opportunities for employment, which just means that we are taking personal circumstances into considerations. And one way of them is through reasonable accommodations, which is, of course, a legal obligation as well. But we also know that both employers and employees see benefits once reasonable accommodations are implemented. There is a lot of statistics around it, but just to mention a couple. So we know that 85% of employers reported retentions of valued employee once reasonable accommodations were in place. And also they reported 53% reported increased productivity activity. And as you might already know, there is a very strong business case around creating disability inclusive workplaces, because the so-called disability champion organizations, they also saw 28% increase in their revenue. So this was just to set the tone for the session. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Niall Lane from the Department of Social Protection, who will talk to us about the Work and Access Scheme. And I will stop sharing the slides.
That's great. Thanks so much, Anna. So I'm just going to share my slides now. Bear with me one moment. And thanks for the introduction. And yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Niall Lane, and I work in the Department of Social Protection, specifically in employer relations. So today is really the focus is going to be on work and access and the updates to the scheme that took place or took effect last month. So just to kind of let you know what I'm going to go through, I'm going to briefly talk about employee relations as a division and the different things that we do, and then dive into work and access, and then looking at kind of the updates themselves, then eligibility of the scheme, the individual grants, of which there are 7, and then looking at the application process and the quotes as well. So a lot of you probably know or have heard about employer relations, but for those that don't know, so employer relations is part of kind of Ireland's public employment service. So a lot of you know it as Intro. And it's basically the point of contact for employment, income supports for both job seekers and employers. So for my division, there are 50 employer relations officers around the country, and their jobs are to basically engage with employers, help them to fill vacancies by providing supports and services. Within those 50 roles, there are 6 dedicated disability employer relations officers, and their focus is on the disability supports that the department provides. So in terms of the supports and services that we provide, I've broken them down into kind of 5 broad categories. We offer financial subsidies, disability supports, recruitment services, work placements, and we have the Employment and Youth Engagement Charter. But for today, I'm really only going to talk about the disability supports, but just to give you a sense of the different supports and services that we provide as a department to employers. Okay. All right, so in terms of work and access, I will be going through each of the supports and the grants individually, but just to give the kind of the headlines of the updates that took effect as of last month. So many of you will be happy to learn that you can now submit applications by email. Up until recently, you're only able to submit by post, so that's now changed. In terms of employer eligibility, that has been slightly expanded. Basically, people who or employers in some areas of the public sector can now avail of the grants. So I'll go through the definition shortly to kind of give you an understanding of this expanded eligibility. VAT will be paid on communication support. That wasn't the case before, but just to be aware that VAT isn't paid on the other grants covered under the scheme. There are removal of some quote requirements. Again, I'll go through them individually shortly. And then for some quote thresholds, there is an increase as well. So for some grants, you don't need as many quotes now, depending on the cost. The forms themselves, which are called the WA1 and WA2 forms. So there are 2 forms for those that don't know. There have been some updates there. Again, I'll go through that. And then the last one there is so the Irish Sign Language is now a named component of one of the grants. So it used to be just called the Communication Support Grant, and now it's the Communication Support and Irish Sign Language Grant. Okay. So those are the 7 grants covered under Work and Access. So you'll see the grant type there, and the grant name, and then the amounts kind of associated with each. And now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Work and Access application forms. So again, for people who don't know, there are 2 application forms. One which is called the Work and Access application form. We know it as WA1. And then the Work and Access employer application form, which is the WA2 form. Okay, so first we'll look at WA1. This is for employees and self-employed people. It's administered by employment personal advisors. So that would be a different division in the department. We'll be looking after the WA1 forms. The grant typically pays suppliers, and then there is the option for a representative or advocate who can assist the applicant as well within their application. And that advocate or representative doesn't need to be a person's employer. The WA2 form, the employer application, this is for employers and those who are self-employed, and it's administered by employer relations officers, so like the likes of myself and my colleagues. So this grant reimburses the employer. So the employer will pay for the services themselves once they get approval, and then they get reimbursed. Okay, so in terms of, say, the updates to the forms themselves, I'm just going to give kind of a quick side by side. So here we have the old kind of forms and the grants that were covered under each. So you can see the kind of WA1 form had 5 grants, WA2 had 3. The reason why there's 8 is because workplace needs assessment could have been applied for under either grant or either application. Okay, so under the new forms, that has changed. So now work needs assessments are applied for solely through the WA2 grant application form. And in-work support has also moved from the WA1 form to the WA2. So there's just a little bit of movement with the forms in terms of the grants that are applied for. I should also say that these slides will be shared, so don't worry if you're not taking this all in. It's a lot of information. We will be sharing these slides afterwards. So Anna has agreed to kind of send them around after this session today. Okay, so just in terms of eligibility, employees have to be over 18, the right to work in Ireland, and the job must be in the Republic of Ireland. So it needs to be a paid employment, or it can be work experience or an internship or apprenticeship that lasts for over 6 months. Person will need to have a disability or health condition that impacts their ability to work, and that must last for longer, or expected to last longer than 12 months. The roles that these employees are working must be for a minimum of 8 hours per week. In terms of employers, employers must be a non-public service employer. Okay, so there's a key difference there between, it used to be non-public sector employer, it's now non-public service employer. And so this can include private sector, community and voluntary sectors, not-for-profit organizations, and of course, you can be self-employed as well. So now I'm just going to look at the 7 individual supports. Just a brief overview of each, and then any updates that have come through since last month. So a workplace needs assessment is used to identify kind of any needs that an employee requires in their place of work, and it's all about sort of breaking the barriers down in the workplace. There is up to €2,500 available for this assessment. And so this is where a kind of a specialist will come in, could be an occupational therapist, occupational psychologist. There are a number of different specialists that can be availed of to carry out this assessment. And they may make recommendations to kind of improve a person's quality of working life. In terms of updates, there are now no quote requirements for this grant. It used to be that you needed to submit multiple quotes if it cost a certain amount. That's no longer the case. And this grant is now applied for through the employer application form only. So it's through the WA2 form. COM support and Irish Sign Language is available as well. And if someone needs that grant, the Irish Sign Language or COM support for workplace needs assessment, that can be applied for through the WA2 form. Okay, so the next grant here is Communication Support Irish Sign Language. And this is a grant to avail of sign language interpreter, lip speaker, and any other type of communication support that a person will require. This grant on its own is applied for through the employee form, the WA1, and a workplace needs assessment is not required for this grant. Some grants require a workplace needs assessment. This one doesn't. There is no financial amount for this grant. Like the previous one, it was €2,500 available. The grant allows for hours, so there's hourly allotments, and you can see in the bottom right-hand corner there the grant hours that are available. And it includes different situations for when this grant can be used. So you can see there, you can use the grant for interview support. You can use it for ongoing support throughout your working life and your job. And it can also be used together with other grants. So as I mentioned, it can be used with the workplace needs assessment. In terms of updates, as I said, the grant name has changed. It's now Communication Support and Irish Sign Language. There are no quote requirements when someone is availing of Irish Sign Language interpretation. There's also an allowance for what's called a booking officer. So if an employer has a number of employees that would need this grant, they can centralize all their applications through a designated booking officer within the company who can make these bookings on behalf of those that need it. Okay, next we have in-work support. This is support for a work coach or specialist or another type of support worker to basically help someone to carry out their role or to take on a new role. And there is a grant of up to €12,500 available per year for this grant. And a workplace needs assessment is required in order to avail of this grant. In terms of updates, there's no quote requirements. So similar to the workplace needs assessment, there's no quotes requirements for in-work support. And this is now applied for through the employer form, the WA2. Next, we have personal reader. So this is where someone who is blind or visually impaired can avail of someone to support them in work-related reading. There is 12,500 available per year for this grant. A workplace needs assessment is not required. And the grant is applied for through the employee form, WA1. There's actually been no updates to this grant. It's the same now as it was before. But there is a note in the guidelines to highlight the fact that people can also obtain technology or equipment that supports in their reading as well, if they would prefer. So people may want to use the personal reader, or if they want, they can purchase equipment to support them in their reading if needed. Okay. So on that, I'm going to look at the workplace equipment grant, and this is for assisted equipment or technology needed to carry out a job effectively. So this grant includes the training if it's needed, and the grant is up to €12,000 for a business premises. It's also up to €12,000 for the remote working premises of a person. So as an example, if someone requires a specialist desk, they can get that desk in their business premises and their remote working premises as well. Okay, so realistically, this grant is worth up to €24,000, but it's 12,000 for each premises. The workplace needs assessment may be required. Okay, so a lot of the times it's not a requirement, particularly if the equipment is quite clearly needed and quite obvious, and also if it's relatively inexpensive. A deciding officer may ask for a workplace needs assessment if it's quite an expensive piece of equipment, or if it's not exactly clear why it's needed. So a deciding officer may require workplace needs assessment. This grant is applied for through the employee form, which is the WA1. And in terms of updates, there have been increased quote thresholds. So there'll be a slide about that a little bit later, but I believe the initial quote threshold was €700. So if you were getting something for €700 or more, you'd need an additional quote. That's been raised to €1,000 now. There's also been an expansion of eligibility of what could be purchased under this grant. So one example is technology subscriptions. That's now included in the workplace equipment grant. The next one here is workplace adaptation, and this covers the cost of essentially physical adaptations to a business premises. It could also be adaptations to equipment within that business premises. I say that because it's not a person's home. So this grant can't be used for a person's home office if it's in their own personal residence. There's up to €25,000 available for this grant. And it's applied for through the employer form, the WA2 form. And a workplace needs assessment is required for the workplace adaptation. Okay, the last one here is disability, equality, and inclusion training. There are 3 training options. There is the general disability, equality, and inclusion training for all staff. Then there's what's called disability specific training. And that's where an employer may avail of sort of specialized training that could be, I don't know, Irish Sign Language lessons, or it could be neurodiversity training. So that's what I mean by disability specific. The next one there we have is inclusive recruitment and training for managers. And that will be managers and HR staff. So that would look at making recruitment processes more inclusive, as well as workplace environment more inclusive as well. And so examining things like unconscious bias. There's up to €20,000 a year for employers to avail of this training and of this grant. A workplace needs assessment is not required. And actually, it's the only grant where you don't need a sort of an employee to be on the application form. So every other grant requires that an employee be on the application because it's for them. This grant is, for staff as a whole, so you don't need to have any individual staff member on the application. This grant is applied for through WA2, the employer form. And just an update here is the cost. So it's also the only grant where it will never cover 100% of the costs. It will either cover 80% or 90% of the costs. Now, as of last month, 90% of the costs will be covered if the course is delivered by a qualified trainer or certified by a recognized governing body like QQI or CPD. So I suppose the big change there is if the qualified if the trainer is qualified, then you can avail of the 90% funding. Okay. I'll just look at the application steps as well. So the basic steps are that there's 3 of them. You submit the application with the application form, quotes if required. They get sent in. They get reviewed internally by one of the deciding officers. Then an approval letter is issued, and then a supplier setup form is also issued where needed. The supplier setup form is so that the department can pay the employer or supplier. Okay, so once the approval letter has been received, the grant can then be used, or the thing that has been applied for can be purchased. The next step then, step 3, is payment. So once the kind of the service or equipment has been purchased, the invoices and receipts, the payment documentation is submitted to the department, and we will then issue reimbursement. Just a note on approval: funds can't be approved retrospectively or retroactively. So you must get approval first before making any purchase. Okay, so that's just something really important to note there. Other potential steps within the application process, we have something called approval in principle. That's where someone doesn't know what they want, but just want to know what's available and if they're eligible. So they might not indicate a particular grant, and we will still then engage and have a conversation with the employer or employee, but we might issue an approval in principle letter. There's a request for further documentation may be issued. It could be that there's a quote missing, so we might request further documentation. A workplace needs assessment may be required. There is the approval letter, but then also there can be refusals for whatever reason. But I should say that there is a review process as well. So it's not a statutory scheme, so it's not a formal appeals process, but there is a right to review a decision. Okay. Application submission. So as I said, you can apply. These can be submitted online now. So you can email them to workandaccess@welfare.ie, or you can still send them in by post. That's fine. In terms of quotes, that's probably the most one of the bigger challenges for people is finding the quotes, because applicants must source their own quotes. In terms of workplace needs assessors and other support workers, there are great lists on Koru or AOTI or the professional registers. There's also what's called the Wide Framework Supplier Directory. I know Anna mentioned it earlier, but the supplier directory is a great resource finding kind of the likes of training providers that can avail of this grant. I should just say that the department does not maintain a list of its own approved suppliers. So I've just got a slide there about the wide framework. Again, these slides will be shared, so you can have a look at that in your own time. And this is just a quotes overview. So you can see that some of the grants require quotes, up to 3 quotes, and then there's a number of grants that require no quotes anymore. Okay, I won't go through this now. Again, it'll be shared. There's a few links here for more information about intro in general, and then intro for employers. And I've also listed some contact lists there for employee relations officers and designated disability employment personal advisors. Okay, there's some contact details there as well for Work and Access, employer relations, and myself. So I know a lot of information there. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm going to hand back over to Anna now.
Thank you so much. And there were so many reactions and questions in the chat. So I think everyone really appreciates all this information. And I think there are comments, that people really appreciate some of the updates. So that's really great. In the interest of time, maybe we can try to answer some of the questions in the chat as well. And for some, we hope we will have some time in the end. But if we don't manage, don't worry, then we will try to answer in the follow-up email. So all the answers should be there. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. And now we are moving to the next section of today's sessions. I'm really delighted to welcome Tony Ryan to this session, and we are very grateful that he will be sharing an experience, from the employer's perspective. So Tony is a senior manager in corporate security in a pharmaceutical company, and he's responsible for Ireland, EMEA, and APAC. And I will hand it over to you, Tony, for the next 10 minutes. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Niall, as well. And look, folks, good morning, everyone. And I've been just asked to come on here to this call just to give my experience working with the department and Niall's section, and also with disability awareness, etc., in the workplace from my experience here. And I suppose Anna mentioned it there that my section in work is corporate security. And look, it's not something you'd associate with a person in my workplace and leading out in disability coming from a corporate security background. It's usually ER, HR, or OH, occupational health. But I suppose the reason I'm involved is more so from my private life, and I just want to give a small bit of background in that. I was a volunteer on a health and wellbeing committee within a GA structure, a county board structure in the GA, and we did a lot of work in our county in relation to disability and helping young children with disabilities in our counties to be more included in the GA, etc. And then we put in a sensory room in our county board, or in our county grounds. And look, we got some recognition for that work that we did. And because of that recognition, it was someone saw it in my workplace and asked me then, would I get involved in disability in our workplace and helping to promote it, to give some guidance, to give some training, etc. in my workplace. So I came in from sort of not a typical background that would be involved in this area. So I just wanted to give that background, and it sort of shows that anyone can work in this area of disabilities in the workplace. It doesn't have to be a specific section. So that's the reason I told that story. I suppose then just to kick off our journey in our workplace, in my company, it kicked off about 18 months ago, where we had a good structure in place in relation to disabilities and reasonable accommodations, but we needed to improve it. And I was asked to get involved in relation to that. So the journey that our company went on was very much, we sourced a company to provide training for, firstly, our leadership teams. Then we got our executive leadership team involved and trained, and then we got all our managers trained, etc., in relation to disability awareness and neurodiversity training within the company. You're talking about a company of 1,000 people here. And then I was pointed towards Niall in the Department of Social Protection and his area in relation to the grants and the advice and the guidance that Niall's section can give from the department, and worked very closely with him and found him very easy to work with. And look, it's amazing to think that you can get up to 90% and even 100% grant refunding for this work within your companies or where you work. And that's fantastic. To get 90% or up to 100% refund is amazing. So what we did in our work was we sustained it. We didn't just do a once-off training. We sustained it for about 18 months in training from manager level up in disability in the workplace, disability awareness, and neurodiversity training. And that was done online and also done in the company. And it wasn't just a tick the box exercise. It was genuine. It was a lot of work put into it, and people got behind it and pushed it and embraced it. You've got great support there with the Department of Social Protection, with Niall's section, like I said, in relation to getting this more into your workplace and get it more sustained, and just to give these people an opportunity to work equally within the workplace, people with disabilities. We also trained up disability liaison officers in our company, all across Ireland, and we just made sure that we had people there to go to, managers to come to us looking for advice, looking for help in relation to someone that might have got a disability later on in life and that is on their team, and just to there to support and help them. I'm trying to think, is there anything else on our journey that I did? It's been a very positive aspect of our company, and we're just there to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity, and how valuable people with disabilities are on your team. Like I said, you'll have full support from Niall and his team, and in relation to the funding, in relation to what type of training to do, etc., within your company. So look, we have found it a very positive experience, and we're going to make sure it's sustained and continued, and keep the training going within our company. I think I've covered everything, and I haven't taken up a lot of your time, but I'm willing to answer any questions or queries if I can. And Anna, if you think I've left out anything or want to ask me anything, please come back and say it to me. But that's where we are from a company perspective and an employer's experience. Thank you.
Amazing, Tony, and thank you so much for being here and sharing, because I think your experience is so interesting from various points, that you don't, because usually we see people working in HR, responsible or starting this process, but I think your story is so unique, that you brought this into the company, and also that you highlighted the importance of senior leadership buy-in, and also your systemic approach, that the training wasn't like a one-off tick box exercise, for your organizations, but you rolled it out, and it was a longer systemic process as well, and that you have the disability liaison officers network, right, as well. I think
Thanks, Anna.
so much.
Thank you.
So really appreciate. Let's see, if we will have any questions for you as well. But we can start the Q&A. We have 15 minutes, which is, I think, great, because there are so many questions tonight. But if anyone will have any questions to Tony as well, I think this is an amazing opportunity to ask, from an employer perspective, what approach might work, or, if you have any kind of challenges with that. Mo, do you want, should we start with the questions in the,
Yeah, I've gathered some few questions from the chat, and the first question I have is for Niall. Could you clarify the difference between non-public service rather than non-public sector? And then another question, which I think he has already answered. Does the workplace need assessment needs to be CORU registered? That I think he has already mentioned in the chat, but there is a question about the CORU register for the workplace needs assessment. And then we also have a few questions.
Maybe we can stop with, if that's okay, to give Niall time to answer maybe those.
Okay.
I can do that. We might also, if it's all right, Anna, maybe we might pause the presentation or the recording, if that's
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to indicate myself and Tony kind of answering questions, if that's all right. Or do you want to continue with the recording?
No, that's fine. I'm just thinking. I think there is no way to stop the recording.
Oh, there is. I think. Oh, can you not? Oh, that's fine. Okay. Yeah. Just. I'm sure that's fine. Just maybe that won't be in the actual recording that goes out, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Or maybe we can end. Sorry, I think I found. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here with us. We will stop the recording now, but we will share all the resources in a follow-up email. Yeah, and I will try to stop the recording. Thank you so much.